Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. So I'm sitting up in my office as usual. I got brown hair, brown eyes. I got my headset on. I'm wearing another I guess this was an Ezra design with Dustin helping out, but supporting the Fledge today for some reason. And today on the show, we've got our great friend, our longtime friend, John. How you doing today?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So, what you been up to today?
Today has been a packed day, actually. Got up early, went for a ruck with a friend who you know, David Silva Smith. We both walked around with 20 pounds strapped to our back, and then work. We got the kids on the bus to go to school, and then worked away, and pretty much nonstop until we jumped on this call together.
Yeah, what does David walk with everybody? I had to walk with him last night.
It's his way. Yeah, I don't know what it is. This is his way of having a good time and seeing people. So
I abandoned him, man. I had my shot, my first Moderna shot on Monday morning, and man, I do not feel like 100%. I did feel it. I definitely felt it. So did you?
I have not gotten vaccinated yet, probably at some point. I'm letting everyone else kind of get in there who feels like, I feel like I'm not at the big, risk group. So I'll let the other people go first. But I have heard that many people who've gotten it say like the second one is actually worse. That's where they feel that they're, mainly feeling the effects.
Yeah, maybe it's, I guess I'm just weak or something. I don't know.
No, just get ready for the second one. That's what I've heard. So.
Oh, this is great. I'm going to be probably half passed out during the show in about a month. So let's talk about you a little bit. Tell us, where were you born and raised? Where'd you go to school?
Yep.
Why are you here?
Yeah, why am I here? Yeah, deep. Yeah, get philosophical. So, born in Lansing, grew up in East Lansing, and then moved to Mason, just obviously local to Lansing, and then went to Michigan State University for college. I worked for about 10 years doing various things after college. Worked at a startup, did sales. I ran a media department. I actually went to film school 20 years ago. So lived in New York for just a chunk of time. That was a crazy fun experience. I loved growing up, loving movies. And so if you ever want to talk movies, I will talk movies like anytime, anywhere, pretty much drop anything else on my schedule, just FYI.
Do you have a favorite movie?
I do.
What's your favorite
if
movie?
I tell you mine, you have to tell me yours. So
okay, I'll do my best.
Okay. Honestly, I have so many favorite movies. I think I'm actually going to say two just because that's, I'm answering the question. So personally, I love the very first Superman movie with the one with Christopher Reeve, the first one, 1978 one.
Yeah.
For lots of reasons. Looking back on it, it's a little cheesy, but that movie I used to watch as a kid. I don't know. I must have seen it 150 times probably. But I will also say, in terms of my favorite movie, the movie that most people I know have not seen, my favorite director is Akira Kurosawa. And he has a movie. His most famous movie that most people might know is called Seven Samurai. But he has a movie called Ikiru, which is Ikiru, and it's translated, it means to live. And I tell you what, it is one of the most powerful, profound movies I've ever seen. It's incredible. So that's one that I will say, if anyone ever wants to watch a movie, it is subtitled, it's in Japanese, but it is one of the most beautiful, moving, inspirational movies that I've ever seen in my whole life. So there you go.
Well, I really like Akira, which is a little bit different. Do you
It's
know
different.
that movie?
It's definitely different, but still Japanese, right? So
yeah,
there you go.
All right, so you put me on the spot. I really love Pulp Fiction, but I think it's the soundtrack. I think it's the soundtrack.
The music is amazing. Well, the music in almost every Tarantino movie is incredible.
Yeah. I think I own all the soundtracks for sure because Reservoir Dogs is really good. Natural Born Killers is super good. But
Yep.
that was that. I always think, is that Tarantino?
Which one? Reservoir Dogs?
Oh no, Natural Born Killers.
Didn't Tarantino write it? Because Oliver Stone. No, he didn't write it.
Yeah.
That's Oliver Stone. Natural Born Killers is Oliver Stone, right?
A good soundtrack. That's why I think it's Quentin Tarantino.
Interestingly, Natural Born Killers has Rodney Dangerfield, doesn't it?
Yes.
In the non-comedic role. So I always find that super interesting. I actually loved Rodney Dangerfield, and I like he's a person that I've actually studied because I think he's fascinating. But it's so interesting to go back and see him, doing stand-up, and then his comedy movies are some hilarious, and then he's in this crazy role, right, in Natural Born Killers. I thought it was fascinating.
He was horrifying in that movie.
That's right. Just
horrifying.
It was the opposite, right? It was a crazy role. And I think I saw Oliver Stone talking about one time where he cast Rodney Dangerfield in the role. Rodney Dangerfield initially said, "No, this is not me." Because like if you see him in Caddyshack, he's really just playing himself. Like he's just being Rodney Dangerfield. And same thing in like some of his other movies, like is it Easy Money, and then Back to School, and a bunch of other movies that he has. He's basically playing Rodney Dangerfield, and that's one movie where he is not. It's very different. Different role for him.
I have documentaries that I love. Like I love 13th. I think is a very good, very relevant.
What is that? What is 13th?
It's about the 13th Amendment and the Jim Crow laws that
I have not seen it.
Happen after that. Yeah, highly recommend 13th.
I love that stuff. Okay.
Especially in 2020, 2021, as social justice really came up, though it should have been up for 400 years, as I think both you and I agree with that. Mm-hmm. So
that's interesting. It's good to know.
Yeah, so that's a great movie. I love that movie. Very informative. But documentaries, I think, sometimes don't count.
Why not?
I don't know. I think film and the story and the fiction, and I love all of that, people's imagination. And then I don't know if it's fair to say your favorite film is a documentary.
I would count it. I'm counting it, Jerry. Yeah, of course. I think when I went to film school, I'll tell you this, Jerry, the documentary filmmakers have just as much talent, just as much vision, just as much drive as a narrative or fiction, filmmaker, narrative filmmaker, feature filmmaker. It's just different. It's just different skill, right? You're still taking elements that you shoot and tell a story, right? It's just you have some ability to incorporate, real life and shoot it in a different way. But I don't know. I still think it's a film. I would count it. There you go.
Well, you're the expert, so if you're going to count it, I'll count it. And
there you go.
And I'm going to say something we didn't really prepare for, but we're talking about all this philosophy, kind of this film, this art and culture. I thought you were a lawyer.
I do have a law degree. I do practice law. I'm not. I would say, from my experience, I'm not like a typical lawyer. I have so many passions, so many interests. I mean, like I said, I love movies. I love literature. I studied biochemistry at Michigan State, but also English and film. Like I said, I went to film school. I wrote screenplays in my 20s. That's one of the things that I did. I wrote 2 feature film screenplays. One was this crazy movie, which I don't even have the script for. Another was on the life of George Washington when he was, before he before he fought in the Revolutionary War and led the U.S. But it was him as a young man after his father had died when he was 11, and then went and kind of became part of the French and Indian War. I thought it was one of the most fascinating stories I've ever heard. So I wrote a screenplay about it, and I actually researched it for like 3 years. But I wrote a couple screenplays in my 20s. Nothing ever came out of it. But it was a very good experience, and it was just something I loved to do, and still to this day I love telling stories. I mean, I would say I'm a storyteller, more than anything else, even though I do practice law and have a bunch of other stuff going on.
So maybe you're like the, they have prequels, right? You can be the prequel to Hamilton. You can sell your screenplay.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, honestly, Absolutely. And I loved Hamilton, and I thought Hamilton was so fun. And part of it too is you hear about, like, this is massive commentary. I don't know if you wanted to talk about this stuff at all, but if you look at like American history, a lot of times we cover the Civil War, we cover World War I, World War II. We don't cover as much the Revolutionary War, which there's still some very fascinating stories. Particularly, I like some of the people who maybe aren't as not necessarily popular, but you just don't know as much about them. Like, one thing was the Marquis de Lafayette. Man comes over from France because he believed in the cause of freedom. I think the guy was fascinating. Like, can you imagine just leaving your country and saying, there's a whole other country over here and they're fighting for freedom, and I believe in freedom, and I don't care. I just want to go fight for freedom. It's just so interesting. And then there's go ahead.
Hemingway did that, right? In the Spanish Civil War.
Did he? See, I don't know that much about Hemingway.
I think so.
But it's interesting. Isn't people like that? It's amazing. And then there's the idea of Benedict Arnold, which I think is super fascinating, how he was actually one of Washington's best generals, and he felt like he didn't get the recognition he deserved. And then, obviously became, a famous traitor by switching sides, right? But it's interesting because he got injured in battle, and then if he would have died in battle, he would have gone down as one of the great heroes of the Revolutionary War. But he didn't, and he lived, and kind of became famous for a different reason. So anyway, there's tons of, I think, interesting people that you maybe don't know as much about.
How do you and I know each other for like 5 years, and this is the first time we've ever talked about? We're always talking about entrepreneurialism.
Well, I love storytelling. I don't care where it is, and I think entrepreneurs, I help them from the legal sense and maybe investing and those kind of things. But that's just part of life, right? It's not the purpose of life is not to make money, right? There's other things to talk about and learn from. And I love talking about the other stuff almost more than the formal business stuff.
Yeah. The other stuff, I don't know. This is super interesting to me. I could spend, we've already cruised through 13 minutes where I haven't asked you the next question.
Sure.
So you have some projects that you work on, and Foster Swift, we can say that, right? I hope so.
Of course.
Of
course. Yep.
And you do great work for entrepreneurs and for startups and in all kinds of different spaces. And Foster Swift is a great supporter of the entrepreneurial spirit, I guess I would say. Always loved a few of the law firms here, but you guys make stuff happen.
Yeah.
But that's not the project you listed when you signed up for Every Damn Day.
That's right.
So let's jump into that one.
Well, yeah. And let me say, my law practice is generally representing businesses, business, tax, intellectual property, including entertainment, right? So I do a lot with people that are creative artists and things like that. And for me, as I already mentioned, I love telling stories, right? I went to film school, and I'd always wanted to write. When I came back from New York, I realized I didn't want to move to New York. I didn't want to move to LA to go kind of devote my life to being a filmmaker or being in that film industry. It just wasn't for me for lots of reasons, which I'm happy to talk about if you want to know. But I came back and I thought, I'll just write. That's in my 20s. I came back to Lansing area and I said, I'm just going to write, and then I'm going to do other stuff and I'll write in my spare time. Well, I ended up going to law school, kind of a crazy story, which I've written about, but just crazy kind of 180-degree turn career-wise. Quit my job in December of 2009, right, and started law school 2 weeks later in January of 2010. And I think it was, about 5 or 6 years ago now, I had always wanted to write. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to start writing. And I started writing kind of nonfiction online about reinventing yourself, changing, because that's what I did. Ultimately, when I went to law school, I completely reinvented myself professionally. And I started to take notes as soon as I was going through that process. And so I started writing about reinvention. And I was actually writing a book on reinventing yourself. It was called the Reinvention Formula. I still have everything on all my notes. And about a year and a half ago now, a friend of mine said, hey, how's the book going? And I said, well, I only have about 15 minutes every day to write with my schedule. I have 4 kids, very busy law practice. I produce movies. I don't think we've even talked about that, but I produce movies. I teach at Michigan State. I just taught for the first time this past fall. I teach at Cooley Law School in their LLM program. I teach tax. So I do all this stuff, right? And still try to be sane and sleep, right? And I can only write 15 minutes a day. And so my buddy said, John, you're never going to finish that book. It's going to take you 10 years to finish that book. And I realized he was right. He said, you need to just publish a book in 2020. So what can you get out in 2020? And this was at the end of 2019. And he actually said this. He said, what about that silly book your kids told me about? And I said, oh no, we can't. And what happened was, I used to tell stories to my kids at night. I have 4 kids, great, beautiful, awesome kids. And so I, get tired of reading the same children's books all the time. So then I would just invent my own stories and I would tell them to the kids. And it's private. Like, it was just, you're with your kids, you're telling them a story. You just trying to make the kids laugh. You're trying to have fun, right? I love that. So one day, this guy, his name's Jerome, he comes over my house and my kids tell him about one of the stories that I told the kids. And it's actually their favorite story. I've told that story to my kids about 100 times. And they tell Jerome. And then Jerome says, I think you should, during this conversation about the book, he said, I think you should write a children's book about that story because that is hilarious. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired from my law firm if I do this. Like, number one, it's a children's book. So typically like a, big firm lawyer doesn't go and write like a children's book. But the topic is super embarrassing. Like, it's just embarrassing. And he said, I think you got to do it. And so I went back to my wife and I said, what do you think? Should I do this? And essentially, I'll tell you the idea, right? I was having a conversation with my kids one night and we were talking about fairy tales and Cinderella. And I basically said, isn't it kind of silly that in the Cinderella story, the prince has to try on the slipper to see if that's his true love? Like, wouldn't you know? Wouldn't you recognize her? Like, wouldn't you look her in the eye or listen to her voice? Or she would say, hey, it's me, right? Like, why do you need to put the slipper on her foot? It doesn't make any sense. So I created my own version of it that's, I said, even sillier. And it was basically the story of Cinderella, except the clock strikes midnight and Cinderella's leaving the ball and she's running away, running down the steps. And she loses her slipper, but she bends over to pick it up, picks up the slipper. But as she's getting up, she passes gas. She toots. She farts. Okay. And then runs away. And instead of the prince finding the slipper and having to go take the slipper around the kingdom and have all the maidens try on the slipper, all he has is the smell of her toot. And so he has to go around the kingdom asking all the maidens to toot, to fart, and find the smell of his true love. It's called CinderToot. And
so you didn't get fired from your law practice, right?
Yeah, to cut to the end of the story, they didn't fire me. They actually did a really nice write-up and look at John wrote this children's book, and it's,
I smile on every show because I love you guys. But this might be this is the most strenuous smile I've had.
So, but Jerry, I'm still embarrassed talking about it, but now it's like, okay, it's out. So it's like, I can't put it back in the bottle. Right. But
literally.
Yeah.
And you're the first person to say fart on the show. Congratulations. That's good. Hey, everyone farts though, right?
Well, and the other thing is, look, with kids, they laugh. They think it's hilarious, right? And honestly, adults too, we just don't say it. So I'm just kind of saying the unspoken, thing. But here's what's, I think, powerful about the book and what I realized too. I really had to make a choice. Like, am I really going to write a fart book? With like, even all the stuff you said about being an entrepreneur and helping entrepreneurs and doing all this stuff. It's like, I represent, and probably some people watching this I manage their trademark portfolio, or I'm helping them sell their business for $20 million, or I'm doing, all these kind of things. And I thought, well, I'm writing a fart book, by the way, it doesn't fit. Right. But here's what really, I think if it was just, hey, I wanted to write a book, I probably wouldn't have done it. But what I realized was, my kids are age right now, 10, 8 years old, 6 years old, and 3 years old. And I'm very busy, and I was looking for a way to spend more time with my kids and have fun with my kids. And one thing I struggle with is a way to teach my children about money, about being an entrepreneur, about investing, about starting a business, about executing an idea. And so what I realized was, what if I used this book as a way to teach my children about how to do all of those things? And that's when I said, now this is something that I can put a lot of time into and put money into. And if it flops, it flops. And if it succeeds, then I'm going to show my kids how to be successful and what to do, and including giving some of the money away. We have a set percentage of the gross money that comes in, not the profits, the gross money that comes in, and we give a percentage away. And we chose the charities, the local charities, as a family. And all I said was they have to help kids that are the same age as my own kids. And my kids selected them. And, you know, I certainly won't, you know, make that, I will approve, but my kids selected, and we're going to together write checks to show them this is how you build a business. This is the right way to do it. This is the way I'm teaching you to do it. And, you know, that alone is amazing, but they helped throughout the entire process. They helped select the editor. They helped select the illustrator. I read them all 13 drafts of CinderToot, every single draft. And they knew when a single word changed, they got it, right? They even wanted to draw their own illustrations. I have a version of CinderToot, you know, in my basement that I'm going to save forever, which my daughter Esme drew herself. And it's just the most precious thing. She felt so inspired. She wanted to draw her own illustrations for the book. And she said, Dad, can we sell them? Can we save this? You know, it's just amazing to see how the kids are so excited and how they want to participate. So I
got to pause you for 1 second.
Go ahead.
How can Mona get the book?
Go to CinderToot.com or look it up on Amazon.
All right.
So thank you.
But one other quick thing. Do you want to
go ahead.
Shout out? Did you pick the charities already? Do you want to give a shout out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we picked them about a month ago, right before we got the first royalty check. So we're going to give it to our church, City Life Lansing. Actually, the head pastor there is Jerome, the guy who told me to write the book. They have a great kids camp. They're inner city urban church focused on, you know, helping people that pretty much most other people forget about. My kids see that, and they brought it up without even me bringing it up. So they want to help the kids through City Life. They want to give to Ellie's Place, which I think is a great organization, and I visited there.
I give a fist bump for Ellie's Place, but also City Life. We've done a lot of work with them. We've done different projects together, cross-pollinating. So 2 great organizations.
City Life is phenomenal. They paint the schools. They go in, they paint the schools. They serve the teachers. They clean up parks in Lansing without anybody asking them. I mean, I think it's awesome. Yeah. They visit, like Jerome's visited prisons, and, you know, it's like stuff like that is like people don't know about, but that's stuff that is just, you know, helping the people that nobody else wants to help. That's awesome. And then Lansing City Rescue Mission and their women and children's, you know, section. So they brought all of those up, and I didn't say a word. My kids brought those up, which I was just so impressed. And I said, you guys got it. I'm not even going to change a thing. That's what you want to do. We'll do it. So those are the 3 charities right now. And we'll assess every year, you know, and again, it's not a ton of money right now. Like, this is before I've even taken any money for us, you know, this is just straight off the top, making money back. So I love it. That makes me so happy to see the kids participating, understanding, and now they're going to know that when they start businesses, or if they start businesses, this is part of the process. At the very beginning, you make a decision. What am I doing with any money that I make? Where is it going? And you know, it's not just like, oh, I'll give when I can afford it, or I'll give when I feel like I have this little extra, you know, sliver. It's like, no, we're going to do it right at the beginning. And I think, man, if my kids learn nothing else, I think that's one of the coolest things they could learn.
Well, I think that execution, you know, and making it happen, because a great idea with poor execution will go nowhere. Right. Even a crappy idea with great execution can still move. And
Jerry, yes,
I think it's the important part, right?
Well, here's the thing. The thing that blows my mind. I have heard the stupidest idea. Like, I am even embarrassed to tell you about it. It's so stupid. And guess what? the guy made tons of money from doing it. And I thought, I don't even want you to say that I'm associated with this idea. It's so stupid. But he made money. And then I've heard what I thought were great ideas that made nothing, zero, right? So to me, it's a matter of learning how to execute. And this whole process has been so interesting to me. I've written articles about this. Like, I think building the team is so important. And I wrote an article. I wrote an article about how I wrote a children's book in 15 minutes a day, right? You can find that on Medium. It's on my list, or if anyone wants it, they can reach out to me and I'll happily send them a link. But there's so many great lessons, right? In fact, I wrote an article, Your Children Are Horrible Business Partners, but Incredible Advisors, talking about the process of me writing the book, right? And it's kind of like a little bit of tongue-in-cheek or satire, but I think it's exactly right. To me, the book is not just about John writing a book. It's about John incorporating his kids. And even my wife still to this day says, John, you ruined my favorite fairy tale. Thanks, But I think, you got to admit, it's funny, right? My wife participated. And let me say one other thing. This book was written, the drafts, so all the manuscript was done before the pandemic hit. But when the pandemic hit, I had not yet hired an illustrator. And an interesting part of the story of the book is that I put the book down. I didn't touch it for 2 months, starting March of 2020 until really the end of April. Because I was just like everybody else. People were hurting, people were scared. It was just a crazy time, a lot of anxiety for a lot of people. And I was even thinking, how do I protect my family? How do I protect the people I love? So I didn't touch the book because I just thought it was too silly. And I thought this is the wrong time to release a silly, funny book. And one night, it was about midnight. Everyone in my house was asleep. I found the printed manuscript of draft 13 after the editor. I hired 2 different editors. They both had went through all their passes. We had everything ready to go to an illustrator. And I found the printed copy, which I hadn't read in just under 2 months. And it was midnight. I was sitting in my kitchen and I just started reading. Jerry, I was laughing out loud at my own book. I was just having so much fun and I was cracking up right in that pandemic time, right? It's just people were scared, people were frightened, and I was laughing. And I had this realization. I realized that this is exactly what the world needs right now, is joy. The book brings joy to people. If you were to say, what are you selling? I'm not selling a children's book. I'm not selling a story. I'm not selling, a stack of paper, right? Here it is. This book, right? It gets you about 30 minutes of joy with just by yourself or with some kids. And once I realized that that's what I was selling, I thought, I got to hire an illustrator. We got to get this book out, like right now. And that's when we hired Kate Cosgrove from Lansing, an incredible illustrator, by the way. You should give her a shout out. She's hilarious and very talented.
I'm not sure I know how to spell her last name. Will you help me?
Cosgrove. Kate Cosgrove.
Cosgo?
Grove. Yep.
All right. Kate Cosgrove.
Give her a shout out. She's incredible, and I want her to do my next books, by the way. So put some pressure on her. No, just kidding. But kind of kidding.
Got to be a little conscious of time with you.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah. Where are we at?
Not for me, because I know you're busy and you got another thing coming up. Joy sounds like a great mission. Your entrepreneurial sounds like a great mission. You work for a law firm that helps entrepreneurs. How do you describe maybe what your mission is? Do you have different missions?
I do. So yeah, this is something I put a lot of time into over my life for the last, 15 or 20 years. Like, why do I exist? What's my purpose? Right. And I think I have 2 purposes in life. And if anything that I'm going to do doesn't fit into one of those, then I probably won't do it. Right. Or I'll try to cut it out of my life. And purpose number 1 is share the truth through stories. That's number 1. I'm a storyteller. Everything I do, I want it to either be filtered through this first one or the second one. But the first one is share the truth through stories. I love telling stories. That's why I produce films with a great group called CDI. I represent filmmakers and artists. I love to share the truth through stories. I think that's why we have stories, and that's why we love storytellers. The second purpose I would say is I want to build influence that ultimately helps people. So that's why I work at Foster Swift. That's why I do what I do. That's why I went to law school, is I wanted to build influence with people in the community so that I could help people and make a difference. Like, that's it. And that's why I practice law. I don't practice law to make money. I don't practice law to, for my ego, or I don't practice law just because I love practicing law, even though I think it's fun sometimes. But I do it so I can build influence that ultimately helps people. So those are the two things: share the truth through stories and build influence that ultimately helps people. And if it doesn't do either of those two things, then I'm going to really question, like, why am I doing it?
What's something you do every damn day to push those forward?
Write 15 minutes a day, Jerry. That's all.
I thought that might be the answer.
That's all I could carve out. I read a book called The One Thing by is it Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, I think. And he said you have to pick one thing. What's the one thing that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or not important? And for me, I said it's right. And I could just carve out 15 minutes a day. And that's how I wrote a children's book. Doing all the other stuff that I do, that's how I wrote about 100 articles over 2, 3, 4 years. Just 15 minutes a day. That's all the time that I had. And that's what I try to do every single day.
You know what we should have done? We should have scheduled about 3 hours, because I'm so interested in the movie production and all of that, but we got to keep it going.
We'll talk again. We'll talk again for sure.
We will. We daisy chain the shows together, and yesterday on the show, I had Chelsea, who's she's doing a fitness and mindset business, and it's pretty cool how she's bringing this all together. And her question to that she wanted me to pass to you is, why did you choose a book out of all these things? But I think you might have answered it.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about telling a story in a different way?
Of course, absolutely. I think for me, a children's book was something that I could do with very limited time. And basically, I had met a woman online who taught people how to self-publish children's books. And because this is crazy how the world works, right? Just coincidence, probably more than coincidence. But when I know someone who writes a book, I almost always buy their book. Even if I have no intention or no time to read their book, or I'm not even interested in the topic, I'll just buy it because I want to support them, because I think if I was in someone else's shoes, I would want someone I know to buy my book. So I just always buy people's books or movies. So the way I got started producing movies with CDI was I saw a local filmmaker who I did not know and had never met. I saw something online or in the newspaper about him, and I just bought all of his movies, like about $80 worth. I just bought everything that was available on his site. And I got an email the next day from the guy saying, "Hey, I live right by you. Can I just hand deliver these to you?" And he came to my house. We talked. We became friends. And that was my connection into now I work with him and we produce movies together. So similarly, I bought this woman's book, on how to self-publish a children's book. And then my buddy Jerome says, "You should do a children's book." And I'm thinking to myself, I have Evie's book. Like, this is incredible, right? So I pull it out. I actually hired Evie to help me with the whole process. She's been phenomenal. And it's just amazing. I could have gone a lot of different directions. I could have wrote something longer. I could have tried to produce like something animated or like some type of film or something. But the bottom line is, it was the quickest, easiest way to get something out that I could still accomplish. I could bring joy to people and also incorporate it into what I'm doing with my kids.
That's so awesome. And if anyone out there listening doesn't walk away with, "I better buy that book from my friend," then you're not listening.
It will bring you joy. It will bring you joy.
And just a quick shout out to Mona, Serena, and Chaz. You know Chaz, our good friend.
I do know Chaz,
yeah. Serena and Mona also were in the One and All program that Leap. They're going to graduate tomorrow, so it's going to be
congrats.
Awesome. Yeah. Tomorrow on the show, we've got Jay Price. He runs the Chronicle, a Black-owned newspaper. And what question would you like to pass to Jay? Like me to pass to him?
Well, I think I always ask this. I like to ask entrepreneurs, or really anyone successful, this question: what failure did you have in your past that's preparing you for this particular opportunity?
Yeah, and I really love that question. We examine that word failure all of the time. And is it ever really a failure? Or if it is, what can you pull from the ashes and learn from? So let me flip that on you. What failure has prepared you the most?
So I would say tons. Yeah, there's like a lot of things, right? I think I'm very motivated by different regrets that I have. You know, I'm not someone that says I have no regrets. I certainly have some, but they're almost all linked to opportunities that I wanted to reach out to someone, and then for whatever reason they pass away, or I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. I remember there was a coworker who, I can't even remember the name of the disease. He got a nerve disease. He had to leave, and I was trying to schedule a time with his wife to come visit him, and I was just busy because I'm just a busy person, and I kept delaying it, and finally, I said, "Okay, I'm ready. I can come." And she emailed me back the next day and said, "You know, Dave passed away 3 days ago." So it's just crushing when I think about that stuff. And I actually had another experience where I emailed an old professor of mine from law school, and I said I just wanted to catch up, right? And I normally would do it every maybe 3 months, but it'd been like 6 or 8 months. I can't remember exactly, but it'd been more than normal time. And his wife emailed me like a week later and said, you know, he passed away, 3 weeks ago. So, you know, you never, like, stuff like that, I think motivates me to tell the people I know I love them, to not take any moment for granted, and to just enjoy the time where I'm here. Nobody knows how much time they have. And even the thing with writing a silly book with my kids, I hope my kids are going to remember that, and the fun that we have and the joy and the laughs. I'm telling you, if you want to laugh, wait till you hear the sequel ideas. Okay. You think CinderToot, wait till you hear my version of Rapunzel, Jerry. It's going to be amazing. So anyway, those are the things I would say. Those are, you know, you could call it failure, you could call it a mistake, you could call it just whatever, you know, you're oblivious, but I take it pretty seriously. Those are things I want to learn from and get better at, and make sure I prioritize like the people in my life.
Yeah, that's why I love the question. You just kind of said it: succeed or learn. There's really not a failure. If
That's
you
right.
That's
right. Absolutely.
A couple of questions I've just recently started adding to the show. The first one is, what gives you hope?
Well, I think for me, there's a couple of things. One, I think I'm a person of faith. I think there is like a higher power. I do believe that gives me hope. But even more so than that, and not more so, but just in addition to that, there are people out there who want to help other people and who are selfless. And once you get around those type of people, that is incredible, right? Where they're not just trying to be successful for their own lives, their own ego. You see people who genuinely want to give sacrificially and help other people, and genuinely recognize that there are other people who are not as fortunate. I just don't think, if you get around people like that, you either are going to become like that or you're going to leave, because it's very challenging. And so that gives me a ton of hope. The other thing is, ultimately, I think that, the truth comes out eventually, right? Whatever it is. So that gives me hope as well, is just thinking about, people can say whatever they want, but the truth ultimately will come out. So that, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but those things do give me hope and get me excited to wake up every day.
I always tell the guests, you're always right. I'm not looking for anything. I'm looking for these wonderful answers that all of you give. You all have a different perspective on life. So I love those answers.
Yeah.
What is happiness to you, and are you happy?
So I actually, I've written about this, right? I think there's two keys to happiness. So I'll say my two keys, and then I'll tell you what I think happiness is. I think there are two keys to happiness. My dad used to always say you have to serve other people if you want to be happy. And I think he's right. I do think he's right. I would add something, though. I think you have to serve other people, but you also have to create something. If you really want to be happy, you have to create something. It doesn't have to be It can be something physical. You can build something. It can be an organization. It can be a family. It can be a life, a career. I think you do have to create something. It contributes to happiness, and it's one I think required, right? And a lot of people sometimes will say like happiness is a feeling. Sometimes people even say happiness is a choice. I actually think happiness is a skill, where you can develop it. You can find ways to be happy and to more so than choose to be happy, but it's a skill because a lot of times you can make really bad decisions and they make you very unhappy, right? So happiness is partially the skill of having a good attitude and being optimistic and being hopeful, like we just talked about, but it's also making good decisions so that you don't do anything that makes you miserable or unhappy or ruins your life or really negatively affects the lives of people around you.
You really, I don't know what the right word is, poked me there, because those are the two things that I probably try to do every day, is to create something and to help people or to serve people. And I've never been happier in my life. Never.
Right.
Never.
That's what I think. I'm on the same page, and I would say I'm happy too. And I think that the times that I don't do those things, that's where I start to not be as happy, to be honest. So I think, as soon as you start to say, I want to build something for myself, just for me, I frankly, I'm just not as interested in it, because I don't feel as happy. But as soon as I start to give an external purpose to what I'm doing, even with a silly book, right? Even with my law practice, give an external purpose to it, serve other people, you just have a completely different attitude and mindset. And I think it does result in being happy.
So Chaz doesn't believe he ever failed at anything, but he wants to know what normal humans like. What's something you failed? What was a failure? Did you fail at
For me, what have I failed at? What was the last thing you said? Did I fail at what?
any like an occupation or something? Like you were
So
horrible at being a
sure.
biologist or something?
Well, I'll give you an example of a failure that ultimately turned out really well. But when I was in law school, I joined moot court. I really didn't want to, but I thought, okay, this will look, looks good on your resume, and it's actually a very fun thing. And it's basically like appellate procedure, right, where you're arguing in front of a judge, not like a trial, but you're going in front of a judge, appealing, the results of a trial. And it was my first year of law school. I was partners with my good buddy Dave, who's a lawyer in town. Dave's awesome. And him and I got to the semifinals of the whole, school. And during one question, the judge asked me a question, and I was asked the same question like 4 times in a row. And I got very frustrated because I gave the same answer 3 times, except the 4th time I said, "You're missing the point." And I said it very directly, very rudely. And it's a very bad thing, right? I got kind of visibly upset, and we lost. And I was really crushed afterwards. I was really embarrassed for, it might seem small, but at the time you're trying to win and you're trying to, succeed. And that moment, right, when I saw the look on the judge's face, she just like had this look like, oh, and it's like I slapped her mom. Like that's what it looked like, right? And so it was very challenging, and I was very disappointed, especially since I thought it's my fault that we lost. The moral of the story is, though, I got so upset about that and just, defensive about it, that I worked like extra hard to do better in the competition the next year. And so it really turned out well, where I did fantastic the next year. But that was a big failure, and it actually taught me quite a bit. And I write about it when I write about some of my reinvention stuff, which if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share it.
So as we start to wrap up here, I gotta frame this. I'm gonna just say the question, then I'll explain it a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Aren't all lawyers dicks? Like, aren't you guys evil, money hungry? Just what happened to you? Or am I wrong about the first part?
So I'll be honest, I know lots of lawyers, and sometimes I always joke with people. I'm saying like, look, I'm a lawyer and I hate lawyers. Okay. But here's the reality is lawyers are advocates, right? So you could say in one sense, lawyers are dicks or pricks or whatever you want to call them. But lawyers are advocates, right? They're representing someone. So they're taking a position on behalf of somebody else. Okay. Absolutely, there are reasons to not like lawyers. Okay, absolutely, and I will not, deny that. But I do think lawyers serve an important function. And actually, this is something I've been thinking about. I'm just going to float this idea to you. But I just have had this thought recently. Who are the people that really defend us against the government, against tyranny? And I worked for a great lawyer. When I first became a lawyer, my mentor was a guy named Frank Reynolds, who was a criminal defense attorney. If anyone knows who that is, kind of semi-famous, right, as a criminal defense attorney, especially in Lansing. Did some very high-profile cases, was on 60 Minutes, and he practiced criminal defense. And I would say, I think I underestimated the power of a lawyer who does criminal defense, defends people charged with crimes specifically, because they step in between the government taking away your freedom, taking away your rights, taking away your money, your life, essentially, everything important about your life. And they're the barrier between that and freedom, right? Losing all that and freedom. And I've recently come to appreciate those people so much, right? Even if you did commit a crime, you should only be charged with the penalty for the crime that you committed and no more, right? No more. So, and if you didn't commit the crime, there should not be a penalty, right? So I think, like, when I think of the kind of somewhat people who are heroes that you don't necessarily think about, I've just been thinking about recently, and again, I haven't really shared this, otherwise, but I learned that even someone who has committed a crime deserves to be defended, right? Even someone like that. And in fact, you can judge a society by how you treat those people. And so, the worst, so-called worst people, right? You shouldn't treat the lowest people the worst. They should still have rights, and they're still, to me, human, and they're still people. I always say, treat people like people. Don't treat people like objects or things, right? Treat people like people. And that includes the people you don't like, the people who maybe nobody likes. So I think, I just saw Cindy's comment. A lot of times people say, how could you defend this person if you're a criminal defense lawyer? And now I really have changed my thinking. Even as a lawyer, I thought that. I don't do criminal defense, but I have been involved in some criminal defense matters. But I just think it's a good reminder, right, that if the person who we don't like doesn't have freedom, then we're in trouble as a society.
I love that answer. I think you are amazing. You are a badass, and I've never known this much about you before. Though we've been in the hatching, we've done all of these things, and I think you're just amazing. This was super, super good.
Well, thanks for having me on. I love it. Now I'm trying to support what you do, so reach out anytime.
I'm gonna write a book, so you'll buy one.
I will buy one. You don't know. Get ready.
What would you like to take us out with?
Frankly, support my crazy projects, CinderToot.com. There's a sequel coming out. Go to CinderToot.com. If anyone wants to learn how to write a children's book, I actually created a free course. Go to CinderToot.com/free course, because I think a lot of people ask me that question. I'd love to help. It's all free, right? But I just put all my advice in one place. And, I would say if anyone wants to reach out to me anytime, I'd love to help. There's something I put at the end of my emails when I send them out to my email list, my newsletter. There's two things I always say. One is, there are no ordinary moments, kind of echoing what we talked about earlier. And the other is, one of my favorite sayings that I have plastered all over is, right now counts forever. Right now, a single moment can be completely meaningless and lost in time, or it can count forever, meaning you do something that somebody remembers for their entire life. And maybe even is so powerful that it echoes forever. Like it's possible. So I try to tell myself, right now counts forever, all the time. And that's one of the things I try to live by.
Perfect. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up. You tell everyone at Foster Swift we love them. You know I love them, so I miss
Thanks,
seeing
Jay.
you guys. And every day at 2 p.m. Stay tuned, or not stay tuned, but come in tomorrow, and we'll have a new guest. We will see you later. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks,
I
Jay.
really appreciate this. Bye bye.